Okay, so here's the original program. You can see the red LED kind of fading and glowing brighter and dimmer. This is kind of the original program, only a few modifications. And you can see how the variable's working there. The fade amount is the 5 that keeps changing from negative to positive. Of course, in my later program, that 5 becomes a random 20, 0 to 20 number. In this program, the fade number initially is, well, you can see it's ratcheting up and down when it gets to a certain value. So this behaves pretty well. It only started misbehaving when I started making the things more random. And certain conditions would drive it out of bounds. I didn't expect it to. This is the second program I wrote of any merit. And I took their original program, which was a fade program, which faded an LED bright and then dim and then bright and then dim and bright and dim. It was supposed to fade it evenly both ways. I don't think it really worked properly. At any rate, when I started playing with the program and adding to it, it really wasn't behaving properly like it was really supposed to as far as the changing of the variables. And I ended up changing things around over and over again, and I set up 3 LEDs. I wanted 3 LEDs to change, red, blue, and green. And I also had the yellow one winking on the, on the board, 13, which is built onto the board. That just winks to show me the repetition of the program. So the main action here is the red, blue, and green. Red, green, blue. I set them all up to initial brightnesses with random numbers. And I also have a Boolean operator I declared R reverse, G reverse, and blue reverse, which is going to reverse the effect of whether it's going bright or dim. Then I set the pin modes, void setup, set up all these pin modes for the different pins, the output LEDs. And then I declared, in my main loop, I declared my right fade amount to be a certain, random times 20. Green fade amount, same. Red fade amount, same. So up to 0 to 20 basically is what you're going to get out of these for a fade amount. And that's going to be added or subtracted depending whether this Boolean is reversed or not. So they'll add to it to brighten it up. And when it gets to a certain level, it'll reverse it and start counting downwards. So I'm hoping this is somewhat legible. You're going to go to full screen to see this. Let's see if I can get my thing going here. But basically what I really want to show you is not so much my program, but how you can explore and modify things and add to them. And how you can play with syntax as well. You notice I'm putting more than one statement. I'm putting related statements on one line just to make the program more compact and readable. I wouldn't suggest this for your beginning programs. And in fact, if I get an error, say if I get an error on one of these lines, say in the middle of this line here, well then I'd blow the line up. I would just hit return here, hit return here, hit return here. I'd make it break it down to its component line so I could run the check again and see which actual part of it was failing. Because if you do a long line with a whole bunch of statements on it and you get an error in that line, it's going to be a little harder to pinpoint where it is. So you just break it up again. Or you write the whole program that way to start with and then you compact it later. I kind of do a hybrid of that. It's kind of easier for me to write sometimes if I'm doing them all the same. I'll clone this, part of it, and then I'll reprint it and clone it again, and then I'll change the variables to what are changed. If I'm doing 3 things that are for red, blue, and green. That's kind of what I did a lot of here. I did a lot of copying and cutting and pasting, and then changing the variables to suit, changing the R to a G, then changing the G to a B each time I cloned it. And then I added serial print commands again. And this is also, I can check the status of these variables and see if they're really doing what I thought they were doing. And initially they weren't. When I added the serial commands to it, I saw, oh wow, I'm getting these brightening and fading like I want to do, but it's not staying within the variables. It's within the boundaries they're supposed to stay in. I had some numbers going wildly negative. They still looked like they were working, but they were actually, the variables were going really far down negative. And you get to a certain number in Arduino here that's too big or too small, it kind of folds over on itself. It can only go to a certain number. I should look that up and tell you what it is. At any rate, the variables weren't behaving. They weren't smoothly going up and then smoothly going down. They were, at one point I had them smoothly going up, but then they were going down, all at once, et cetera, et cetera. It was really hard to get this all working right. All right, now here's my program in action with my LEDs slowly fading up and bright and dim. They may go slow sometimes, they may go fast sometimes. And I even put a little blender here. I want to see them more as, one blended light. Really, I need to have a darker room for you to see this properly. But you can see they're dimming and brightening, and they're not doing it on a consistent basis, as it's all random controlled. So it was a good program for me because I learned a lot about operators and loops. Learned all kinds of stuff, playing with random numbers, etc.